Welcome back. We're going to continue our study in Genesis, going from Genesis chapter 15. We just finished the first part of Genesis, and we were looking at the Father blessing Abraham with righteousness and promising him that he would be a nation and promising him that that nation would come from his seed. This is extremely important, brethren, because in the New Testament, we see a lot of the ministry of the Apostle Paul, and we see from that ministry that there are a lot of people that became believers in the Messiah that were not of the seed of Abraham. Now, this was a surprise to the disciples themselves till the Father showed them that he was calling Gentiles into the truth that originated with Israel. And this is important because in Christianity, they've gone off the deep end in this fact that they believe, a lot of them are now believing, that the Israelites are all gone and now the Christians are spiritual Israel. This, let me just make this very plain. This is not biblical and it is a lie. The Father does not make promises and doesn't keep them. The Father's promises are eternal. When he says it, it's going to happen. When he spake, it is done. When he commands, it stands fast. So, because of this brainwashing of Christians teaching Israel is no more, or teaching that the Israel of the Bible are these Europeans that came from the Ashkenazi mountains, which is also a lie. Those people that are practicing Judaism are practicing a religion that they converted to. They are not practicing something they got from Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob, and they are of no bloodline relation to Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob. They received this through faith in Judaism. And so Christians are teaching that these people that came from Northern Europe and Eastern Europe that are now in the land of Israel are the people of the Bible. They are not. I'm just being plain with you. They are not. Okay? They are followers of a religion called Judaism. There is no Judaism in the Bible. Moses did not teach Judaism. Judaism is a religion that came over time from people that may have had relation to Abraham, but definitely it wasn't what Moses taught. And it's not what the Bible teaches. You see, between Christians and these three so-called Abrahamic religions, they took this book and they divided up, and each of them focus on one area. The Christians focus on the New Testament. The people that follow Judaism say they focusing on Moses, but really they're focusing on Talmud and Yiddish, neither of which is in here. Now, some have taught that the Pharisees were practicing Judaism, and that's entirely possible because the Pharisees had their own religion. It wasn't what they got from Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob. It wasn't what Moses taught, though they claimed that. Paul called it the Jews' religion. It's not what they were given from Father Yah. Messiah represented the Father. He represented the Father in the Father's teachings to Israel. He represented the Father in the Father's choosing of Israel as his chosen people. He represented the Father's ways, teachings, and righteousness in every respect. He represented what it was like to live without sin. And people have taken him and transformed him into all different ways, from making him into a children of Yafet color person from Europe, to making him that this is not the Messiah according to Judaism, or saying that this is just one of many, like the Arab man, Muhammad. But the Bible itself teaches there's only one chosen people, the bloodline of Abraham, Isaac, and finally Jacob. It teaches that the Father only showed himself to that people. He didn't show himself to anything else. It teaches that Messiah came from the lineage of Judah, one of the 12 tribes of Israel. It teaches that there's going to be a kingdom, and the basis of that kingdom is a place called New Jerusalem that has 12 gates, that has the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. This is what the Bible actually teaches. Abraham was the founder of no religion. He did not create any religion. He was, as we saw from Genesis chapter 12, he was promised he would become a nation. That's what he was promised. Not that he would create a religion. And as we also saw, what he knew came from Noah. Noah prophesied about the flood. Noah prophesied about Shem. And Noah lived all the way to Abraham's existence. Abraham lived all the way to Jacob's existence. Okay? So this is the chain, unbroken chain that the Father started with Adam and that he created through a nation of people called Israel. In fact, let's take a look at this in Psalms 105. Psalms 105. And we praise the Most High, as we're going to discover, nothing is coincidental with the Father. Nothing is by accident. Nothing just so happens. He has ordained everything from the beginning. Psalms 105. Psalms 105, a Psalm of David, beginning at verse 1. Psalms 105, beginning at verse 1, and going down to verse 12. Okay? Psalms 105, from verse 1 to verse 12. Oh, give thanks unto Yahweh. Call upon his name. Make known his deeds among the people. Sing unto him. Sing psalms unto him. Talk ye of all his wondrous works. Glory ye in his holy name. Let the heart of them rejoice that seek Yahweh. Seek Yahweh in his strength. Seek his face evermore. Remember his marvelous works that he hath done, his wonders and the judgments of his mouth. O ye seed of Abraham, his servant, ye children of Jacob, his chosen. Abraham, his servant, Jacob, his chosen. He is Yahweh our Most High. His judgments are in all the earth. He hath remembered his covenant forever, the word which he commanded to 1,000 generations. Brethren, have we, according to the Bible, have we gotten through 1,000 generations? Which covenant he made with Abraham and his oath unto Isaac, and confirmed the same unto Jacob for a law, and to Israel, Jacob's children, for an everlasting covenant, forever. And saying, unto thee will I give the land of Canaan, the lot of your inheritance, when they were but few men in number, yea, very few, and strangers in it. So they were strangers in Canaan. That's what Abraham was. And while they were strangers and few, he said, I'm giving you this land for an everlasting covenant. So the Gentiles are grafted into this promise, but the promise is to us, the bloodline. Okay, the promise is to the bloodline. Don't let Christianity deceive you and brainwash you into thinking that these Ashkenazi people are the Jews. They're not from Judah. They're not from Abraham. They're converts from Japhet. They're playing the role of Edom. Really. The bloodline is those of us that were enslaved. Those of us that were taken into our enemy's land. Those of us that are the least of all the people. Us. That's the bloodline, according to this word. Okay? Now, we're going to talk about a very important promise today in Genesis chapter 15. Very important promise. So now we started off in Genesis 15 with the Most High appearing to Abraham or Abram in a vision. And he appeared to Abraham in a vision, and he said, I am your shield and your exceeding great reward. And now Abraham says, I'm concerned because I don't have no son. My heir is Eliezer. He was born in my house, but he's not my seed. And the father says, this shall not be your heir. Your heir is coming from your loins, your seed. And I'm going to make your seed as numerable as the stars. And Abraham believed him. That takes us to the second point. Okay. So now, we have established from the word that it is a lineal seed. It is lineage. It is not by faith. We receive Messiah by faith. We receive the Spirit by faith. Abraham received perfect righteousness by faith. But the promise of Yah is for his seed, his physical seed. Yes, it's been mixed, but let me just make this clear. For those of you that heard camps and all these people talk all this stuff, let me explain to you something. The moment Abraham's seed touches anything, it's Abraham. Okay? I don't care if the seed touches Ham or Yafet. If one of them mixes with us, they with us. They're not half anything. There's no half black. If you are a Hebrew, somebody's seed is in your blood. And we have been identified even by our enemies. They made our skin the identifying mark. They did it. We didn't do it. They did it. So no matter where you go and you land in your captivity, because you were a minority because of your brown skin, they made that the sign. The brown skin is the sign. And they've, not me. This is what the children of Yafet said. If you get one drop of that blood, you're not with us. You're not with Yafet. Wait, did I make that up? Have y'all heard that one before? They've stopped people from getting married. They've stopped people from being buried in certain cemeteries because of the one drop rule. Has it? Am I lying? The one drop rule. You get, if they find out that they did the what was it? Something of Jones, the county of Jones or something. It was a true story about this Caucasian man during the Civil War had a black woman, and he was married to a Caucasian woman, but he left her to go to the war. Then he was fighting the Free State of Jones. He was fighting in Mississippi, and he was joined with ex-slaves, people that were disaffected, poor people, and people that didn't want no part of the Civil War. And they defended this area, and they took this little area. Now, he was successful in fighting off the Confederates. Now, at the end of all this, he ended up living with his two women, which really was his two wives, the Hebrew woman and the woman from Yafet. And he had two children. Okay? One with the Hebrew woman, and he had one with the Yafet woman. And they lived together. Years later, the one he had with the Hebrew woman had a child, which would be his grandchild. And this grandchild could pass. When I say pass, y'all know what I'm talking about. The grandchild could pass because he looked like a child of Yafet. You would look at him and not know that he had a Hebrew grandmother or a Hebrew daddy or a Hebrew mama. You wouldn't know. But then, you know how they go in these small towns, word got out that he was the grandson of that man and that he was from the Hebrew woman. And at that time, when it came out because he was about to get married to a local Caucasian girl who didn't know his history. But the one drop rule said you cannot get married in Mississippi because you got Hebrew blood. Now, they did it to try to separate us from them as if they were the holy ones. But really what they just did is told us who we were. And by that, with our history in the United States, it was clear when you start reading Deuteronomy and you start reading Leviticus and you start reading the history, that there's only one group of people on earth that fit that history. Only one on the planet that looks like the Hamitic people that were enslaved, that were taken in ships, that were in enemy's land of people's tongues they didn't understand, that were the most maligned, whose children were taken away and placed in slavery and in jail. Tells you all of that. Living in want of all things. There's only one people on the history of planet Earth that fit that description. Only one. Therefore, we knew by them actually trying to denounce us, showed us who we are. And there are some that are so desperate to please the children of Yafet, so desperate to be accepted by them, that they'll tell you, oh, we're mixed. Oh, we're half white. In a desperate attempt to be accepted. But when you find out who you really are and what your real heritage is in this book, what your real history is, you don't need to be accepted by them. You don't need their approval for nothing. Once you know who you are. Once you know who you are, brethren, and some of you have already experienced this, you become free. You become free. See, they can give us all the reparations that we're asking for if we wanted to. They can give us reparations. They can apologize for slavery, as some have done. But until you know who you really are, it doesn't matter. You're like an orphan. You're like an adopted orphan and you don't know who your parents are. And you could love your foster parents. You could love them as much as you could love anybody. But still, you don't know who your bloodline is. And something is missing. But when you find out who you really are, where you really came from, and what your future holds, it's better than billions of dollars. It's better than that. As y'all can testify, it's better than that. Okay? We come from here, from Abraham. Here we go. Here's our history in prophecy. Genesis chapter 15. I'm going to start at verse 5 where we ended up. I'm going to start at verse 5 of Genesis chapter 15. And I'm going to go from verse 5 and I'm going to read down to the end of the chapter. But first, let's go pieces. So I'm going to go from verse 5 and stop at verse 6. And we'll go from there. Okay. And he brought him forth abroad and said, look now toward heaven and tell the stars if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, so shall thy seed be. And he believed in Yahweh, and he counted it to him for righteousness. So Abraham received righteousness by faith. Again, brethren, this is how we overcome all our sin. We overcome our sin by trusting in righteousness. Not our righteousness, Father Yah as righteousness and the author and giver of righteousness. Okay? That is why Messiah is called the author and finisher of our faith. What does that mean? As our Messiah, he gives us Father's righteousness because he's called Yahweh's righteousness, as we saw in Jeremiah chapter 23. And through his ministry of high priestly intercession, he finishes us and makes us perfect to be presented to his Father. So that's who we are. We are the seed. I praise the Most High, you know. There are people that are still struggling with this belief, you know. I could praise the Most High because there is absolutely no doubt in my mind of who I am and where I come from. There's absolutely no doubt. And there are things, you know, y'all all have this. If you are Hebrew, you understand what I'm about to say. And this is what I love about it, because we can all relate because we come through the same seed, right? So look, isn't it true in your family, there's things your family don't want to talk about? Dark things. Dark things that your family might have done or things that happened to them that they don't want to discuss because of our history, right? They don't want to discuss that. Or, you know, like me, I started doing research. I started doing genetic DNA research, and I found my grandfather. I found my father's father. They didn't want me to find him, though. They did not want me to find him. And my grandmother used to clean people's houses. See, she's coming from Florida. She didn't know how to read or write. At that time, some of y'all know this. At that time, Black women were told, find you a good man. Didn't matter if he was married or not. Find you a good man. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? Find you a good man. I met some old sisters like in their 70s and 80s who grabbed me because I was a manager in the bank. Oh, man, if I was young. And somebody said, well, he's married. She said, I don't care. He's a good man. Because that's how we was taught. She had no education. She used to clean people's houses. And you know what happened? When you clean people's houses, sometimes the young men in the house would rape you. Sometimes they'd rape you and you get pregnant and they deny that they did it. What you gonna do? You couldn't go to no police. What you gonna do? You understand? So that's what happened to my grandma. And she never talked about who did it. My father wondering all his life who this was. Never talked about who did it. But with modern technology and DNA, I found the scoundrel. I found who he was. I found his family. I found brothers and sisters that were my father's brothers and sisters and his aunts and uncles that he didn't know nothing about. Guess what? They don't want to know nothing. Kind of expected. But it is what it is, isn't it? And so my grandmother never talked about it. Never said who got her pregnant. Never said who his father was. Didn't want to talk about it. And if you mentioned it in the family, somebody gonna get angry at you. And there were a lot of other things. You know, hush, hush. Nobody said nothing. And it's all based on prophecy about our history, brethren. All based on that. When you read the word, you can clearly see it. And now, you know, when I first awakened, I was trying to explain to my old aunts and my cousins, and they didn't want to discuss that. Because to me, those things are not shameful to me anymore. It's part of who we are. It's part of prophecy. It's part of our history. That's who we are. That's how we got here. That's part of the curse. And it helps understanding. When you gain understanding of who you are and why you're here and how you got here and what the whole situation is, you know. Like on my grandfather's side, I can find history of all my Jamaican relatives, right? Clear. I can find all my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, right? But I can't find on my grandfather's, my mother's grandfather, my great grandfather. And the reason is I was always told he was a Maroon. In Jamaica, the Maroons were those that fought against the British. They went into the mountains of Jamaica, up into Mandeville, what's now Mandeville and Blue Mountain, and they held that area with using the machetes they were used to cut the sugar cane. They used the machetes, did work, and they would steal the guns from their enemies, and they were in. But see, you can't make that known. Imagine now, you wanted the people starting these, they were called mutiny, right? And you wanted the people starting. You can't make known that you was one of them people, right? Because there might be retribution. Some coon might turn you in. That's why I can't find anything about my great grandfather, but I know he was a Maroon, and that explained it. See. So you start to understand all of these things based on who we are and why we are. Praise the Most High. Okay, praise the Most High. So now Abraham is told, you're going to have a seed, and I'm going to make your seed into a nation. So many people that you won't be able to count. Okay, now verse 7. Genesis chapter 15, verse 7 and verse 8. Okay. And he said unto him, I am Yahweh that brought thee out of Ur the Chaldees to give thee this land to inherit it. That's the land of Canaan. I brought you from Ur to give you this land. Abraham, few in number, right? Not a nation. I'm making you a nation, and I'm giving you this land. So then he's asked for a sign. He asked for a sign. You ever ask for a sign? That's another way you know something. You ask the Most High for a sign, right? And you got to be ready to follow the sign. He say to you, ask for a sign. Okay. Verse 8. And he said, Most High Yahweh, whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it? It wasn't that he doubted the Father. He wanted a sign, an assurance, some assurance that said this is going to happen. Some assurance. Okay, that's what he was looking for, a sign. And we've seen that lots of times in the Bible. We've seen that lots of times. Remember the fleece with Gideon? He had a sign. Moses was doubting he should be called, and he said, look, I sent your brother, he's coming. And as he said, here come Aaron. And then he gave him the rod that turned into the snake. He gives you signs sometimes. Zechariah, John the Baptist's father, said, how should I know? And Gabriel said, I just told you. I stand in the presence of Yah. I told you. Okay, here's your sign. You won't be able to talk until the boy is born. And he couldn't talk. So he will give us signs if we ask him for signs, especially things that, very important, like who we marry. I get asked him for multiple signs about my wife, and he kept giving them to me. Every time I would ask for a sign, he'd give it to me. Because I needed the assurance for that very important thing, right? I needed the assurance. He gave it to me multiple times. Okay, so Abraham said, okay, what's the sign that I'm going to inherit this land? What's the sign? Yeah, don't be afraid. If it's real important, like if you're being moved suddenly, like with us, ask him. Father, give me a sign. Show me, that I'm supposed to be doing this. He will. Just make sure you're ready to follow his will and not yours, because he will show you. He will show you. Okay. Whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it? Verse 9. And he said unto him, take me an heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. So he gives him basically a menu of sacrifices. He said, 3-year-old heifer, that is a cow, a female cow is a heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, a ram of 3 years old, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. He needed all of these. This was going to be for the sign. So he said, take you this heifer, take this ram, take this goat, take this turtle dove and this young pigeon. And then I'll tell you what to do. So Abraham gets all of these. Probably had most of them in his own flock. Verse 10. And he took unto them all these and divided them in the midst and laid each piece against the other, but the birds he divided not. So he killed them. And he had half on one side and half on the other side of each animal, cut them in half. And then at the end of it, he killed the turtle dove and the pigeon. He didn't divide them, had them on each side. So he had a path down the middle, and he had the animals on each side of the path. This was obviously some sort of sign. Well, obviously, it was a sign, and it was a sign by blood promise. Okay. Verse 11. And when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abraham drove them away. So he had to protect them that day, all day, because vultures would come to eat the dead animals, but he was chasing them away. And verse 12. And when the sun was going down, that is the end of the day, a deep sleep fell upon Abraham, and lo, and horror of great darkness fell upon him. So now the presence of the Father is coming. And he said unto Abraham, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. This is an interesting number. We're going to talk more about this in a few minutes. 400 years. So he's telling Abraham that your seed is going to be a stranger in a land not theirs. 400 years. Okay? And they're going to be afflicted for 400 years in that land. They're going to be afflicted in this land for 400 years. Also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge. And afterward they shall come out with great substance. So he's telling Abraham, your seed is going to be not only you having seed, but your seed, your nation, the nation I'm making out of you is going to be afflicted, and they're going to be strangers in a land not theirs 400 years. And I'm going to bring them out at the end of that 400 years. I'm going to bring them out with great substance. Okay. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, and thou shalt be buried in a good old age. So this is going to be after your lifetime, Abraham. It's going to be after your lifetime. It's not going to happen while you're alive. It's going to be, you're going to go to your grave in peace, in a good old age. But this is going to happen after you. But in the fourth generation, they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. So let's go back again to Noah's prophecy. And let's look at Genesis chapter 9 and Noah's prophecy about Shem. Okay. Verse 25. And we'll start at verse 24. This is Genesis chapter 9, beginning at verse 24. And Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, blessed be Yahweh Most High of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. So he goes back and he promises Canaan to Shem. Then, of course, he said, he shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. So the children of Japheth will take over Canaan's land and dwell in where Shem is supposed to be. We see that happening already, right? So that's what's going on right now. So, but Shem is supposed to take over Canaan's land. And of Shem's seed, it was Arphaxad, then to Eber, then eventually to Abraham, and then to Jacob's children, Israel. That's going to take over that land. So he said, the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. We looked at Leviticus chapter 18, and we saw what they were doing in the land, and how the immorality was on a, off the charts level. Leviticus 18 explained to us that the immorality in Canaan was off the charts, so that the Most High was warning our fathers, don't do what these people do. Don't do what these people do. And in fact, a lot of the statutes and commandments of the Most High, when you read them, they really are enjoining our fathers to not be like the heathen. Just because the heathen do something and it's popular, like tattoos, for example, right? We see today tattoos are extremely popular, right? It used to be that the only people that got tattoos back when I was a kid, which is a while ago, but was sailors and people in jail. Those the only, when you see people with tattoos, they were either a sailor, somebody that had been across the 7 seas, in the Navy or something, or maritime, or they were in jail and his tattoos were some gang symbols, And so that was back in the 60s and 70s. Those are the only people you used to see with tattoos. Then brothers started, like Allen Iverson particularly, he was from Hartford, but he went and grew up in Newport News, Virginia, and had been in jail. And he come out of Georgetown and started putting tats on himself. And then from that, it set fire and everybody wants tats. That's how it really started. And then the women wanting to be like the men started getting tats on them. And so now it's popular and people getting tattoos. But the Father said to us, do not put this stuff on your skin. Long time he told us that. But because we hadn't read the word and because we were into white Jesus and we weren't following our God, we also started putting tats on ourselves. And some of us are now awakening, but we already got the tats, right? But that's the point. That's the point. Don't be like the heathen. Just because heathen do it, don't mean you got to do it. And when he talks about trimming the beard, that's what he's trying to say. He's not saying you need to have a beard. That's not the command. He's trying to tell you don't trim it the way the heathen do it. That's what he's trying to say. And that's often the command. Don't do like the heathen do. Don't cut yourselves the way the heathen do what they did. Don't do what the heathen do. That's what he's trying to say. Okay? So the Amorites were practicing all of these things. The Canaanites were practicing all types of things in the land. And he's saying their iniquity hasn't reached a point where I'm ready to destroy them yet, but it's coming. And that's why he told Abraham, their iniquity is not yet full, but they're going to fill their cup and I'm going to destroy them. I'm going to let your seed take their land. Okay. Verse 17. Genesis chapter 15, verse 17. And it came to pass that when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp passed between those pieces. See, the pass between means you are making a promise that if you don't fulfill the promise, you should die. He told Abraham, make this up, create this, and I'm going to walk between it. That's your sign. And not only that, not only am I walking between it, that's why he walked between it in the form of a furnace, in the form of a lamp. He walked between it. Abraham saw that. He said, now I'm promising you, and I'm telling you the prophecy. Your children are going to be in affliction 400 years, and I'm going to bring them out with great substance, and they're going to take over this land. And the iniquity of the people of this land is not yet full, but when it is, your people are going to take over. And that's what Leviticus 18 showed us. Right. And of course, it goes with Noah's prophecy. And now here, the Father's giving it. And again, the testimony of Messiah is the spirit of prophecy. So whatever Father is telling you, that's prophecy. Messiah's testimony is what his Father says. It's his Father's righteousness. It's his Father's words. So that's why Messiah is the prophet, because he tells you what Father is saying. Okay. So the Father's words a prophecy. And so Father is telling Abraham, this is what's going to happen to your seed. This is where they're going. Verse 18. And the same day, Yahweh made a covenant with Abraham, saying, unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates, the Canaanites and the Kenizzites and the Cadmonites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Rephaims and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Girgashites and the Jebusites. So he's telling them all the people of this land are going. Your people are taking this land. Okay, that's promise. Now, I want you to notice something. That day, Father made this covenant with Abraham. He's going to later change his name to Abraham in the next chapter. But here, he makes this promise to Abraham, right here, or Abraham, as you might say. And when he makes this promise, I want you to notice this is between him and his servant, right? So all of these nations didn't know nothing about this promise. And yet the promise was made. And he said, unto thy seed, they didn't even exist yet. And he's saying, unto thy seed, he said, have I given this land. So Abraham's seed didn't even exist yet. And he's promised, I'm giving this, I'm making you a seed, and I'm giving this land to you. Why do I bring it up? And the heathen didn't even know anything about this. But this was between Father Yah and his servant. We talked about 2027. 2027 is the 40th Jubilee since Messiah. Let me say it again. 2027 in the fall is the 40th Jubilee since Messiah. The Jubilee is where all land is restored to the original owners. That's Leviticus chapter 25. The Jubilee is where all land is restored to the original owners. Not just your debts forgiven. That happens every 7 years in Israel. But every 50th year is a Jubilee, where all land, no matter if you lost your land, your family lost it, whatever, you get it back. Okay? And that declaration is made from the throne. So the Father will declare, I'm giving you back your land. I'm gathering you out of all the nations. And it doesn't matter if the heathen know, realize it or not. He makes the declaration because it's the Jubilee. 2027, 40th Jubilee. Okay? That Jubilee happens on the 10th day of the 7th month. 5 days later, Feast of Tabernacles. They shall no more say, Yahweh liveth, which brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But Yahweh liveth, which brought up and which led the seed of Israel and Judah and brought them back to their own land. So I'm illustrating here that the Father made Abraham a promise and gave him the land and gave his seed the land. His seed didn't even exist yet. And the heathen didn't know nothing about this promise, but that's not stopping the promise. It didn't stop what happened. Just so. In 2027, the Father makes an announcement. All your land is going to be restored. I'm going to gather you from all the nations, and you're going to take this land. All the prophets talk about it. Well, brethren, it's coming. Okay? It's coming. Now, 400 years. The Bible says in Exodus chapter 12, Exodus chapter 12, verse 40. Exodus chapter 12, verse 40. This is where the night of the Passover, the night of the death of the firstborn, our fathers left Mizraim, otherwise known as Egypt. This is Exodus chapter 12, beginning at verse 40. I'm going to read verse 40 down to verse 42. Exodus chapter 12 from verse 40 to verse 42. Now, the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. And it came to pass at the end of 430 years, even the self same day, it came to pass that all the hosts of Yahweh went out from the land of Egypt. It is a night to be much observed unto Yahweh for bringing them out of the land of Egypt. This is that night of Yahweh to be observed of all the children of Israel in their generations. And we know that's the Passover, right? And we already said that there's going to come a day when the Feast of Tabernacles will be highlighted because of our gathering back into the land. Now, 430 years. What's that? Let's think about it. Abraham was 75 years old when he was called out of Ur the Chaldees. Let me say that, make sure we got that. So Abraham was 75 years old when he was called out of Ur the Chaldees. We're going to find out when Isaac was born. Abraham now was his name, and he was 100 years old. Okay, so he was 75 when he was called out. He had Isaac 25 years later when he was age 100. And his wife Sarah was age 90. They had YHWH, otherwise known as Isaac to laugh. They had him. Abraham was 100 years old. So that's 25 years. Now, in Israel, a child is weaned off the mother's breast at age 5. From 5 years old and upward, they're counted as part of the population. When they're a baby, they're on the breast and they're not weaned until they're 5. So now 5 years later, now you count Isaac as the population. That's 30 years. You got me? So there's 25 years between Abraham leaving Ur the Chaldees and having Isaac, or begetting Isaac. He's 100. 5 years later, Isaac is weaned. That's 30 years. From Isaac being 5 years old until they left Egypt was 400 years. That's why they say 430 years. You got that? Everybody got that? But what we should understand, which most of us do, prophecy always has meaning at the time, and it has end time meaning, right? So prophecies that took place before will have an end time meaning. So by their own admission, the children of Yafet say they brought us to Jamestown, Virginia, the first group of slaves that they recorded in 1619. 400 years takes us to 2019. So somebody might say, well, that's past. That's right. So now we're coming down the corridor of the last years of Babylon. The time is past. Okay, the time is past. So here we are. 2017, most of us know, was the sign of the trumpets. 2017 was the sign in the sky. We saw the sign in the 7th month of the trumpets, which is, it was with the sun. Y'all remember that? 10 years later, which is equal to 10 days. 10 days is 10 years in prophecy, is 2027. That's right. 2027. Now, 10 years later, that's the Day of Atonement, which is also, in this case, the Jubilee. 5 days later, which is equivalent to 5 years, is 2032, the Feast of Tabernacles, which is why I keep saying to you all, 9 years on the outside. 9 years on the outside. It could happen before that. 9 years on the outside, this thing is over. Signs are now piling up. See, the first sign, 2017. The second sign, 2019, which is 400 years. The third sign, 2027. The fourth sign, 2032. And that's not including the sign of our awakening. You're following? You're feeling it? The sign of our awakening. Our awakening is a sign. And it shall come to pass when all these things come upon thee, the blessing and the curse which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations where the Yahweh thy Most High have scattered thee. Here we are. And shalt return unto Yahweh thy Most High, and shalt obey his voice. That's what we're doing. So the 400 years, yes, it took place when they came out of Egypt, and it's taking place now. It's taking place now. It wasn't just when they came out of Egypt, it's now. You think it's a coincidence that they marked the time that they brought us here as 1619? Now, of course, we know they took Indians into slavery. We know Christopher Columbus grabbed Indians and brought them back to Spain. But when they took the Hebrews from West Africa and brought them to the shores of the United States of America, which the United States of America is the lamb-like beast, the beast that comes up after the main beast, the beast that looks like a lamb and speaks like a dragon, the beast that has authority and has influence over the whole world to cause the whole earth to worship the first beast, the United States of America, that is now, as we know, the most powerful nation on planet Earth and has treated the evil, the Hebrews, and built their wealth off the backs of us and won't pay us. They can give us reparations. It won't ever, you can never account for the damage you've caused us. You can't. It's impossible. And there's going to be hell to pay from Messiah. We're seeing all the signs. They're lining up, brethren. They're lining up. The 400 years, the 2017 blood moon, the 2027 40th Jubilee, they're lining up. Our awakening is lining up. And it's not everybody, but it's never going to be, is it? The dragon wasn't wroth with the whole seed. He was wroth with the remnant of the woman's seed, the remnant. And that's what we're getting. You think it's coincidental that people are getting tired of Christianity? That they're being disillusioned? That Hebrews are disillusioned with Christianity? You think it's coincidental that both Malcolm X and Khalid Abdul Muhammad left the Nation of Islam? That they were disillusioned with what was going on in there? You think it's coincidence? And that people are now seeking truth for themselves and coming back to the Bible and finding, here we are. Brethren, this ain't no joke. It's only a joke to those that don't believe, and I don't care about them. I'm only talking to those people that know. That's why I tell some people sometimes, I tell people, if you know, you know. See, if you know, you know. Spirit tells who he tells. He who has ears to hear, what? Let him hear. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. So 400 years is not just the children of Israel originally out of Mizraim, which is now called Egypt, but it's us here in the United States of America. Here in the United States of America, where the UN is, where the White House is. Here in the United States of America, where they're trying to change the history. No other nation is doing that. You ever hear of any other nation trying to change it? Even Germany. Germany had Hitler. They're not trying to change the history of what happened there. They're building museums, let everybody know what happened. But here, they're telling you your slavery was a benefit. This is the only nation that does that. They have foods in the United States that no other country will allow. The United States is the only nation that allows drug companies to freely advertise on television and tell you exactly how you're going to get killed. You know, this will help this, but you know, these are the side effects. The only nation. You know, I got to put this video. I did put a link out years ago, a couple years ago. I got to find it again. This dude, this Children of Your Fed did a study. And he did a study on healthcare in the United States. Now, this is going to blow your mind, or it may not. he found that most of the people in the United States want universal health care, which means like most nations, like you go to most nations, even developed nations, Japan or France or Norway, you go to any of these nations, they have free health care. Okay. You won't go broke because you got sick. The only nation that doesn't is the United States. Mexico does. You can get public health care in almost any nation. You can't get it here. Do you know why? He found out. Do you know why you can't get it here? Because they don't want black people to have it. They expected us to die out by now. Between the drugs, the crack, the heroin, the jail system, the 3 strikes law, the poison food they send to our neighborhoods, the malt liquor they make straight from, the malt liquor wasn't made. You don't see, when I was a child, you did not see Old English in white neighborhoods. Old English was in our neighborhoods. Schlitz malt liquor bull was in our neighborhoods. And those beers weren't like, Heineken. They had stronger alcohol content. There's a reason for that. When y'all come from, if y'all from New York, in Harlem on 145th Street, they used to have a meat warehouse, and you should get meat cheap there. I was always a little suspicious. Why is the meat so much cheaper in Harlem on 145th Street? Y'all remember that? It was between like Lenox Avenue and I think it was 8th Avenue. Y'all remember that? And I was like, why is it so cheap? You know why it was so cheap? Because it was poison. They knew what they was doing. We used to think, man, we get our meat cheap. Yeah, we're getting it cheap. Yep. They expected us to die out. Margaret Sanger, the founder of what is now Planned Parenthood, she thought that. She said, but we don't give them no health care. If we just let them go, they'll eventually die out. They won't survive. Not knowing who we really were and that the Father has ordained us to be here. You understand? They do that purposely. But the Father is ordained. He spoke the word. We're going to be here. We're the seed. We're going to inherit the land. Okay? They're trying to kill us, but it's not working. And that's what's scaring them. It's exactly what happened in Egypt, brethren. It's exactly what happened. Look, Exodus chapter 1. Watch. Exodus chapter 1. It's exactly the same thing. There's so many parallels, it's uncanny. Exodus chapter 1. Look at this. Verse 7. Exodus chapter 1, verse 7. And the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and waxed exceeding mighty, and the land was filled with them. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that there falleth out any war. They join also with our enemies and fight against us, and so get them out over the land. So they made their life hard. They tried to get rid of all the males. This sound familiar, brethren? They made their life hard and trying to get rid of all the Hebrew males. Told the women, kill them when they're born. Sounds like Planned Parenthood. Kill them when they're born. Kill them when they come out. Kill them. See, the Egyptians thought we're going to use these Hebrews to make our pyramids and serve us. But what happened is they started multiplying. Well, look here. They brought the Hebrews to build America, and we did. Now we're multiplied, and they don't know what to do with us. They don't want us no more. They don't want us here because we remind them of what they've done. And they want to forget that. They'll change the history to forget that. Remind them of where we come from, what we did. They don't want to pay us. So they want to destroy us. But we're not destroyed. And just like Egyptians, they're scared. That's why you can't get pulled over by a cop and they ask you for your license and you reach for it. He pulls out his gun. Why he pulling out his gun? Last year, my brother started acting a fool in this house. I called the police because I was going to hurt that boy. I call the police and I come out to meet the police in my pajamas in my front yard, right? Homie jumps out the car, sees me, and reaches for his gun. And I said, what you reaching for your gun for? I'm in my pajamas. What you think? I'm going to pull a gun on you? And he said, calm down, sir. And he got his hand on his gun. That alone made me mad. But I understand. They're scared. You understand, brethren? But it's all coming full circle. It's all coming full circle. Okay, it's coming full circle. Here it is. And we're at the end. They're not going to believe we're at the end. I don't care. My point is, y'all should believe. Y'all who know should believe. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Those whose heart is looking for truth will hear. That's all that matters. Father's will is all that matters. Here we are. We're at the end. The 400 years has passed. 2017 has passed. We're getting ready to go to 2027, and it's over after that. You're going to see all kind of stuff. You're going to see all kind of stuff. You already seen it every day. You're seeing it with the politics, with the weather, with the economy. You're seeing it every day. Okay? With the diseases, you're seeing it every day. It's coming. It's almost over. And it started with Father Yah's promise to Abraham. Started with that. And here we are, Genesis chapter 15. Here we are. Okay. Praise the Most High. Well, that was Genesis chapter 15. And we got more to go. Please read your Bible. Talk to your Father. Ask him for his spirit to guide you. He's guided you this far. You're the final generation. You are. If you're watching this, you're part of the final generation. You're part of the final generation of Babylon. Read your Bible. Pray to your Father. He will guide you through. He will navigate you through the minefield that we get ready to go through, that we're already in for these last few years, brethren. He's going to navigate you through this minefield. Pray to your Father. He will guide you. He will direct your path. Glory to his name. May the Most High Yah bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom.